A little bit too enthusiastic there with the open, but that's okay. Welcome to Talkback, everybody. Brought to you this morning by the Mustard Seed Asian Cafe at Southgate Mall, Kootenai Creek Village, the maintenance-free active adult community in Stevensville with the best of Western Montana living. Dig It Excavating, where they bring 30 years of excellence to every job. Call 214-4292. Transport Equipment, your headquarters for RV service maintenance and repair. And Bulls Eyewear, where they offer some of the lowest prices in town on contact lenses. See Lynette at Bulls Eyewear at 2910 South Reserve. Okay, so here we are. We're on Talkback. I'll turn your microphone up. There we go.
And we have Kirsten Pabst on the line.
We certainly do. All right. Good morning, Kirsten. How are you?
I'm well. How are you, Peter and John?
Doing fantastic. Feeling a little bit better. My voice is beginning to come back from wherever it was the last couple of days, but here we are.
Yeah, radio man with no voice. That's a setback.
That's pretty bad. That's like a policeman without a badge, you know?
Or a politician without honor. Never heard of that before.
So what's going on in your office this week?
We've been really busy, Peter. 14 new cases this week. Some of them are kind of interesting. Some of them are we've been talking about. So we got 2 methamphetamine cases. 2 theft cases, one involving the failure to return a rental car. 2 child endangerment cases, which are always sad and challenging. Aggravated DUI. A stalking case. 3 partner family member assaults, 2 of them being felonies. A counterfeiting case, which involves counterfeiting casino tickets.
Wow.
And so, yeah, we've been kind of hopping this last week.
Now, there was one thing I wanted to ask you about. There was a tragic situation that occurred over in Bozeman this week where a young woman was killed by her boyfriend. And the facts are emerging, and I know this isn't your jurisdiction or anything, but it's something you might maybe just say, hey, you know, this is a common occurrence. Evidently, this individual had been bothering this woman for quite some time. There was actually an order of protection to keep him away from her, but he kept coming back. And one of the reports stated that he was in her house, chased her outside, she ran out screaming, and the report ended by saying the man was not arrested. And so I'm just curious as to how that goes. Does that happen often? Is it a deal where he apologized, or you know what I mean? I don't quite understand that.
Well, I am not familiar with the reports that you're talking about. I am familiar with the case. But, what happened in Bozeman and sadly what happens here and has happened here recently is the absolute worst-case scenario of what happens in these domestic abuse cases. And that's why we take such a hard line stance on them when they seem seemingly insignificant at the beginning and you have what some people would call a family squabble. We look at and we dissect and we say, no, is there a power and control issue going on here? Is there a situation that could very likely escalate to something that is going to end up with somebody dead? That's the worst case scenario. We take those cases very seriously, and part of what we do with our groups like Just Response, or we get all the agencies together around the table to talk and identify gaps in services and situations like that where, in hindsight, if somebody could have done something differently, if somebody would have responded quicker to that, or if a call could have been patched through to another agency, for example, and avoided it. That's why we spend all that time trying to look at the prevention side of it so that those tragic events like what happened in Bozeman don't happen.
This morning, we had this story about a case that was a young man picked up in Minnesota after a sexual assault, being convicted or charged with sexual assault here in Missoula. And I was hoping maybe you could kind of explain the extradition process. Brenda Bassett from the County Sheriff's Department told me we actually have like an extradition shuttle that runs a route all the way out to the coast that brings prisoners from here to there and prisoners from there to here. So I don't know if it's like Amtrak or how that works, but I was maybe hoping you could explain this extradition process.
I can kind of skim the surface of it. It would probably take more than the time that we have right now to talk about it's a pretty complicated extradition process. But the gentleman you're talking about is Jordan Barr. He was charged here very recently with sexual intercourse without consent. And the judge set his bail at $50,000, and so what that does is it alerts law enforcement in the states that are selected by us to be on the lookout for him if they find him, to arrest him. And so it's interesting how he got caught. I don't know if you heard that part of the story, but he had asked his boss in Minnesota where he worked. He was on campus there and asked for some time off and wouldn't explain to her why he wanted this extended time off, and kind of raised some red flags for her. She went and Googled him and found out that he had the warrant for him and turned him in. And so then he was placed in custody there, which starts the extradition process. And so when we get a fugitive or when somebody else arrests one of our fugitives, we file a fugitive complaint that allows us to hold them in our jail or in this case in Minnesota, until all the details of the warrant are shored up, because obviously we don't want to extradite the wrong person. And you look real carefully, make sure you have the right person, and make sure that the warrant is valid. At that point, then, a suspect can either waive extradition, which is usually what happens, and then we go and fetch them. And if they happen to be in a state that you're talking about where we've got a shuttle agreement, or an like Washington, Montana and Washington exchange prisoners all the time. For some reason, Montana prisoners like to flee to Washington, and they like to come here. And so we've got a pretty direct line shuttle. Other states,
mutual assured
it can take a really long time to get somebody back here.
We have our own WUI program for prisoners, I guess. Yeah. Sorry.
So, and in some states, for example, we had a man who's now been convicted of murder, homicide, who was hiding out in Georgia, and Jerry Kriego, who was captain at the time, actually flew down and picked him up himself and delivered him back here. So it just depends on where they're located and how serious the crime is that they've been accused of.
You mentioned Washington as one of the states we have the shuttle agreement with because of the love our criminals have for each other's states. But what is the agreement we have with Minnesota? Do we have a similar agreement, or is it one of the more extended processes?
I don't know.
Well, I remember when Kevin Leno, if you remember, was involved with that horrible homicide down by the Reserve Street Bridge. He was actually in Louisiana and fought extradition to the point where you folks had to do a governor's warrant, right?
And we do governor's warrants all the time. That's not unusual at all. It's quite an involved process, and we have to get together a lot of paperwork and all kinds of details, and then we put together a package. I sign it, it's notarized and sealed, and then we deliver it to the governor, who reviews it, has a team who reviews it, and then he signs it. At that point, then, a person who is fighting extradition can be brought back on the word of the governor. So, yeah.
All right. Well, thank you so much, Kirsten. We've taken up more time than we usually allow, but thank you so much for being willing to share that information with us.
You're welcome. Have a great weekend.
You too. Thanks so much. Well, we'll be right back.
If you love the great outdoors, don't miss a Great Rocky Sports Show. Catch the big one. Everything for the great outdoors is under one roof for one big.
Okay, we're back. We're back on Talkback, and you will note that I am not even attempting to do my silly Irish accent because I have learned my lesson, because we have actual authentic Irish folk in the studio today. Treylock, good to see you again, sir. How are you?
Likewise, Peter. And you too, John.
Hey, nice to see you too. And we got Eamon in the studio too.
Hey, you doing? Here, use my microphone. How you doing, Eamon?
Good.
All right. So, Eamon, how old are you?
12.
All right. And where do you go to school?
Centennial Middle School in Spokane, Washington.
Oh, so you're from Spokane.
No, I'm originally from Helena, but we moved to Spokane because my stepdad got a new job.
Okay, cool. So how do you like visiting your dad here in Missoula?
It's pretty fun.
Now, do you do any of the Irish stuff that he does?
No, just make sure he cleans up after himself.
How's that going? That sounds like a feat.
I like it. All right. Sounds good.
Well, he realized his microphone had been stolen.
Oh, sorry.
That's all right.
Yeah.
Hey, Eamon, if you sneak over here, you can bounce off with me here. So, Treylock, go ahead and tell us what's going on this week.
Well, actually, starting this evening, we have a talk up in the Kettle House North Side, and we have a professor over from Ireland, Dr. David Fleming, and he's going to give a talk on the relationship between Ireland and America. And what people probably don't know is that the Ireland we have today was to a large extent created by the Irish of America. It was the ideas of liberty and cultural restoration that emerged here, that informed the political movements in Ireland, that led to Sinn Féin, the Easter Rising, and the War of Independence. So without the Irish of America, we wouldn't have the Ireland today. So he's going to give a talk on that this evening up at the Kettle House Northside at 6:30. And then tomorrow, the celebration of St. Patrick's Day takes place. Now, tomorrow's not the feast day. It's on the 17th, which is Thursday. But the ancient Order of Hibernians moved the parade to the Saturday before in the celebrations because they wanted the families and the kids to be more involved. So the day actually starts at 8 o'clock with Mass down at St. Francis Xavier Church. I mean, we're celebrating St. Patrick, who was a saint.
This is on Saturday or next Thursday?
Saturday morning, tomorrow morning, 8 bells. Everybody down to St. Francis, you're going to need a spiritual fortification for the rest of the day anyway. After Mass at 8, then there's a lineup for the parade at 11. The parade departs at 12 and goes all the way down Higgins Avenue. After that, you can go to the Rhino Bar, to Kevin Head, and slake your thirst because he's having an Irish whiskey tasting. Then head over to...
I want to ask you a question.
Is it a hard one?
It may be. Okay. I want to know, because I am not a drinker, so I'm completely ignorant of these things, okay? What is the difference between Irish whiskey and Scotch and bourbon?
Irish whiskey is far superior. I mean, what more do we need to say?
Okay. I was just curious because sometimes those terms are used interchangeably, but they're different drinks.
They are different drinks.
Okay.
I don't know either because I'm not an authority in whiskey and I don't drink. So.
Okay.
But there's a lot of people out there that are the kind of, they're kind of aficionados
exactly.
of whiskeys.
They can tell you which is which, you see, because there is a difference there.
There is a difference, yeah, and they can go into a big long spiel then talking about all the different qualities of the whiskey and so forth, I can't.
Okay.
You've had bread before, right, Peter?
I have had bread, yes.
Does some bread taste different than others?
It certainly does.
One of the main ingredients in bread would be yeast?
Yep.
Okay. Well, same with liquor. If you use different yeast strains, you're going to get different results.
Okay. Well, I don't worry about bread because I only eat toast.
Thanks for calling KGVO.
Excellent. So, where was I? We were coming out of the Rhino Bar, I think. We were going over to the Loyola Sacred Heart Ramfield. We have a hurling game. Mm-hmm. Which is the old ancient Irish sport that was developed by the warrior culture of Ireland, and it's 15 on 15, every man armed with a stick, a ball, and basically it's every man for himself and God for us all. And we have the Grizzly hurling team, who are the national champions. 2 years.
Aren't they the two-time?
They are, but they're playing the Thomas Mars, which is a community team,
right.
And they're mostly ex-Grizzly players that were part of the team that won the national championship the first year.
Wow.
So it's like the first-year national champions versus the second-year national champions. So it's going to be one hell of a game. So after that, the place to go to is down to the Holiday Inn Parkside because that's where the great Irish gathering and celebration of music and dance, plenty corned beef and cabbage, great company down there will take place. There's also a live and silent auction, and this is the main fundraiser for the Irish Studies Programme. It's at the Holiday Inn Parkside, and it starts at 6. And their tickets are $30, and you can get them online at friendsofirishstudies.com. We'll get all the information. You can get them at the door.
No. The actual day itself, the actual feast day.
Yeah.
So what now? Are you describing things that are actually happening on the feast day?
No, this is tomorrow.
Okay.
Yeah, March 12th.
So what's coming up actually on the 17th?
Well, on the 17th, then there's going to be, I suppose, in different bars around towns, there'll be different things going on. But there's a big corned beef and cabbage dinner at St. Anthony's Parish Life Centre. And at that as well, you'll have Irish dancers, you'll have Irish music, and you'll have Irish ballads and songs. So it's another cultural celebration, and I know that's a great event. So on St. Patrick's Day, I'd suggest going over there. Also, the corned beef is excellent. Their corned beef is excellent.
Well, we have a caller that wanted to ask a question for you. He couldn't stay on because he was losing cell phone reception.
Okay.
But this is the question. It has to do with Ireland's role, or the Irish role, in preserving history. His idea was that because of Ireland's isolated position, that the Latin language and culture of much of the Western world was able to be preserved there while there were wars and conquests going on the main European line. So is that true? What's your take on that?
Yeah, very much true. I mean, if you look at Ireland, even though geographically it's out in the periphery, it was actually insulated. It was an island, insula, from a lot of the disruption on the mainland because you had that barrier there. So if you look at the Bronze Age culture, and look at the great kind of gold work that comes out of the early period. It's coming from Ireland. You look at the great buildings that went on in Ireland. I mean, Newgrange, which is the largest intact standing man-made building in the world, and all these huge monuments, well, they speak to a highly civilized and highly advanced culture. These are buildings you cannot construct if you're in a constant state of warfare. So you have a society that's very advanced. You have a large population. You can actually produce and store food, you know. So this is what the archaeological evidence of Ireland tells us. You come along to the later period with the coming of Christianity, the same thing. In the monasteries of Ireland, you have a coming together of the Latin culture and the traditional Irish Gaelic culture. They were the Druids, and they had a standard language and literary language before Christianity ever came. So now you had the coming together of these two traditions, which produced the oldest vernacular literature in Northern Europe. But they also went to Europe, and they basically laid the foundations for the rebuilding of Christendom.
Well, I wanted to take it back to what you said about the oldest vernacular language, the written language, I should say. Tell us a little bit about that story. When you're talking about vernacular, this is people's street tongue. This is what they're using when they're talking to their friends.
Correct.
And instead of writing in Latin, many of these people are writing in Gaelic or Irish.
Writing in Irish, yeah. Well, they could write. I mean, you had an advanced literary caste of people in Ireland at the time, the Druids, and they preserved orally. They preserved the the laws of the society and the history of the society, the memory, of the community. But we know they can write, and they knew that they knew different alphabets. If you look at the old stones that predate Christianity, they've got Ogham on them, and they're based on the Latin alphabet.
Why do you think that happened? I mean, why do you think the Irish were writing in their own language before everybody else? Is it something about their culture or something about the language or both? Or
Well, they didn't actually write, they preserved it. They could write, but they preserved it through memory. That was the device they used.
Oh, okay.
They only begin to write when Christianity comes. There's a certain taboo. Julius Caesar said he didn't want to share the knowledge. The word Celt actually comes from an old Irish word Kel, which is actually still used, which means to hide. It gives us the Scottish word kilt, to hide something. And the Greek philosophers gave it to the Irish philosophers because they hid their knowledge. They wouldn't write it. But when Christianity comes, whatever taboos are surrounding writing something, committing it to paper, they're removed. So they start to write. But what do they write? They actually create a narrative, which is like an Irish version of the Bible. They're trying to convert the people of Ireland. So they take their old literature and they say, okay, we're going to write a narrative that enables us to convert the people of Ireland. So you look at the first set of tales they have, the book of, you look at the church timeline, says, okay, history is divided into creation. There's the fall, salvation and judgment. You deal with the fall and salvation. Their first stories deal with the Garden of Eden and the fall. The second collection, which is the mythological cycle, has the Irish origin myth, is based on the historical books of the Bible, and the story of the Irish parallels that of the Israelites. And then the third cycle is the Ulster cycle, where you have the Táin Bó Cúailnge and the great hero Cuchulainn, and he comes to represent a kind of a prefigurement of Christ. But you have all these tales, this huge, huge body of literature, that resonate with sounds and images of the Bible.
Real quick, because we got to go to a break. What is this cycle called?
The cycle, well, there's three cycles. The cycle of the kings, that's your fall and the promise of salvation. The mythological cycle, that's based on historical books of the Bible, and that has the origin myth, the book of invasions. And then the Ulster cycle, which has the cattle raid of the Táin, and that deals with the coming of Christ and salvation. I mean, you see Cuchulainn's conception, his baptism, the battle between him and Ferdia, man-God, and then his ultimate death, standing up with a spiritual side.
Okay, well, tomorrow we've got the parade, so that's we're going to work our way around to that. I'm not quite sure. It's kind of a long way around the barn, if you will.
Well, it's a parade in honor of St. Patrick, who was a Christian saint.
Yeah. He had a bishop, and basically he's the kind of the father figure of the Irish, and St. Patrick's Day is a day to celebrate your Irish heritage and culture and come together, and there's a lot to be very proud of. We talk about the Irish, we're not talking about the people living on the island. We're no longer an island nation, we're talking about an international community. There's 40 million people of Irish descent here in America. That's their heritage. God knows how many more are throughout the world, about another 40 million. But throughout the world, there's going to be celebrations of St. Patrick, celebrating that culture and history, and we have it here, the parade tomorrow. Then we have the cultural elements with the hurling games, and then the coming together at the Holiday Inn Parkside, where everybody gets together. and helps to support promoting the culture. And because of the community, this is the amazing thing. It's not really amazing. It's part of a history. Montana has the largest Irish Studies program west of the Mississippi. And here's the point. Back in the 1900s, when Ireland was struggling for independence, the change in the course of Irish history comes because of the Irish of America. They become politically so powerful that the English have to change their policy. And Irish America was defined as a place that rested in 5 great cities: Boston, New York, Chicago, Butte, and San Francisco. Every Irish nationalist leader came out. They all went to these places. They all went to Boston, all went to New York, all went to Chicago, all went to Butte, and all went to San Francisco. And without them, we wouldn't have an Irish Studies program today. We wouldn't have the culture we have today. We wouldn't have the Ireland that we have today. So Ireland has a lot to be grateful to America for, and the Irish of America. And that's something a lot of people don't know. But we're coming along and we're putting together exhibits and documentaries that are going to focus specifically on that and say, hey, wake up here. Without the Irish of America, we wouldn't have the Ireland we have today.
Fantastic. Thanks so much. Appreciate
Thanks,
it.
Peter. Thanks
Good
for
to meet
having
you,
me.
Eamon. All right, we're going to take a break. We'll be right back. To say we went a bit long in that segment is true. Okay, we are back. That's John King. I'm Peter Christian. This is Talk Back, and it's Friday. Lots going on. The final debate before Florida, right?
Yeah, there's even more news this morning. In fact, we have such short time. Let's just play this clip. This is Ben Carson came out and endorsed Donald Trump. If you could find it.
There it is. Okay, I got it. Okay, so here we go. Ladies and gentlemen, the ever so mild-mannered... Whoops, that's not it. Sorry.
Ben Carson's got one heck of a singing voice.
Yes,
You didn't know that.
Okay, here he is, Ben Carson.
You know, I think the Republican Party particularly would be very wise not to adopt let's stop this guy and let's promote this guy policy, but rather start thinking about what are the things that are going to be helpful for America. Right now, you know, we're in a process of going off the deep end. We're going off the cliff. We're fiscally irresponsible. We're hating each other. We're destroying ourselves. A house divided against itself cannot stand. We're failing to take a leadership position on the world stage. Now, some people have said, well, why would you get behind a man like Donald Trump? I'll tell you why. First of all, I've come to know Donald Trump over the last few years. He is actually a very intelligent man who cares deeply about America. There are 2 different Donald Trumps. There's the one you see on the stage, and there's the one who's very cerebral, sits there and considers things very carefully. You can have a very good conversation with him. And that's the Donald Trump that you're going to start seeing more and more of right now. And some people said, but, well, you know, he said terrible things about you. How can you support him? Well, first of all, we buried the hatchet. That was political stuff. And, you know, that happens in American politics. The politics of personal destruction, all that, is not something that I particularly believe in or anything that I get involved in. But I do recognize that it is a part of the process. We move on because it's not about me. It's not about Mr. Trump. It's about America.
All right, there you have it. We'll talk about that after this break.
Well, what do you folks think about that? To me, I was absolutely floored when Ben Carson came out and said he was endorsing. My wife said she saw it. I said, there's no way. And sure enough, there it was. So anyway, I'd love to know what you think. 721-1290 is our number. We'll be right back. All right, this is Talk Back, and brought to you this morning by Bullseye Wear. They offer some of the lowest prices in town on contact lenses. See Lynette at 2910 South Reserve. Nissan and Hyundai of Missoula under new management, offering rebates, discounts, and 0% financing on a huge selection of inventory. Also brought to you by Selway Armory on Stockyard Road. More guns and ammo than anyone. At Missoula, the best prices in Montana. They are Montana's premier firearms dealer. Okay, John King's over there. I'm Peter Christian. I want to say thank you to our guests who have been with us so far this morning. But right now, it's time to get to the phones.
That's right.
And
it's open phones, by the way. You can talk about whatever you want. 721-1290.
Hi, Catherine.
Good morning.
What's
hope
up?
Hope your cold is doing better.
A little bit better every day. Thank you.
Good. Well, an interesting little article in Breitbart this morning, and I think I sent it to the both of you, as I always do. And it discusses this election, especially with Trump and also with Bernie Sanders, as kind of a Jacksonian, or harking back to the Jacksonian era, that it seems to pop up every once in a while in American politics as the ruling class gets hardened and into power. There's a kind of a revulsion by the common people against
There's a revolt.
Yeah, and so in this iteration, it's the donor class that is kind of on trial by both Bernie Sanders and Donald Trump. And anyway, I thought it was, in case anybody's interested in it, is a very good article. And
is it true? Do you believe it's true?
I think there's a lot of it that's true. Yeah, I do. And I've said for a while that there's so much incestuous goings on in Washington, in the East Coast, between big business and big government and big media. They all interact together. They socialize together. They marry. They go to school together. They move from board to from position to position, very smoothly. And they're the ones that are making all the decisions. And that's where all the money is. That has been deciding elections for quite some time. So yeah.
But let me ask you this, realistically speaking. Okay.
Yeah.
Is there any way for any one person or candidate in any office, even one as powerful as the president, to reverse that trend of these powerful cabals, if you will, controlling the very essence of our country?
I think it depends on who gets chosen for these departments, and it depends on how well they choose, and if they choose outside people to come in who are very, very good at what they do to restructure. Maybe there's a lot that can't be because the bureaucracy is very entrenched.
Oh yeah,
but I think that some of it can be mitigated, at least. I mean, it seems like a pattern that goes on in American history over and over again.
Or human history. I mean, cultures tend to, or human history.
Oh,
I mean, cultures that last a long time tend to centralize power. And you're not going to get away from that unless you decentralize power. The problem with Bernie Sanders and Donald Trump is they both want more centralized power.
Well, they want to change who's in charge of the centralized power.
Every single person running wants to change who's in charge.
Yeah.
The difference is they both want to relocate more power and resources in Washington. And that's why I think they're both threats.
I kind of think not.
Well, which government programs is Trump in favor of cutting?
He's in favor of cutting the educational Department of Education. I think he's in favor also of at least restructuring the Department of Energy. And he's also in charge or wants to restructure the military somewhat. And the military is grossly distended in a lot of ways, only in the civilian.
That's what Ryan Zinke said. He said that the amount of DOD personnel that are civilian personnel is staggering.
Yeah, it is. And the majority of money, if you will, does not go to support the people on the front line.
I hadn't heard that about education, but I do have I went to Trump's website to find out where he stands on the education front. He said in October, he was asked, would you cut departments? And they were talking about the Department of Education. And he said, we're going to be cutting tremendous amounts of money and waste and fraud and abuse. But no, I'm not cutting any services. But I am cutting spending. I may cut the Department of Education. Common Core is a very bad thing. I think that it should be local education. If you look at Jeb Bush and some of these others, they want children to be educated by Washington, D.C. bureaucrats. So there you go. I think you're right on that one.
Yeah. Well, it's going to be interesting to see. But anyway, I wanted to recommend that article in case anybody was interested in, kind of digging into it a little bit more.
I really enjoyed the article you said about what's happening at Kansas University.
Oh,
that is
isn't that bizarre?
It is if it wasn't so sad, it would be hilarious. So, anyway.
Yeah, it's just one example of some of the insanity that's going on. I mean, I sent you another one about Cambridge.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's
Anyway, we're up against a break, so
right.
I would have people look it up and they can laugh for themselves. Okay, Catherine, thanks for the call. Candy and Carrie, you guys are standing by. We have one line open, 721-1290. Hey, we're coming right back. Open phones. Ow. All right, 721-1290 is the number, 1-800-568-5309. Open phones going on right now. And let's get back to the phones and say hello to Candy. You are on.
Yes. Good morning. I thought Ben Carson's support of Donald Trump was the right thing to do, and I like the word he chose as Donald Trump being very cerebral, and he should know because he's a neurological surgeon.
Yeah, he's a brain surgeon.
Yeah,
He's not a psychologist.
And I wanted to say too, he's got the backing of Sessions, Christie, the Benghazi survivors, a large group of black businessmen, I think.
And a good number of Democrats.
Yeah?
Yeah, and a group, a Muslim group, and it's very enlightening. But I wanted to talk about the commissioners' meeting and where we got to talk about the refugees and the city council meeting about the water.
Okay.
Because I went to both. What I get upset about is there's no reaction from these people. They never answer questions. We had 12 people that testified on the refugee thing and about the settlement and, asking why you get no answers from these people. And then there were 10 or more people that wanted to testify on the mountain water thing, and Marilyn Marler gave us 5 minutes total.
Right.
And then Jason Weiner prances in, and he gets, 4 of 5 minutes of our 5 minutes. So I don't think Harlan got a fair hearing on that.
Well, you knew that. Well, you knew that was going to happen, though. Come on.
Oh, we are being ruled by a totalitarian oligarchy in this city, and if the people don't come forward, it's not going to stop. And they need to be there at commissioner meetings or city council meetings, and they need to stop being afraid.
Well, I think one of the things, at least as far as pardon me, as far as the way that those city council meetings are put together, is the public comment portions. Whoever, like you have 3 minutes, or I would have 3 minutes. And it's not designed to be a give and take back and forth. It is you present your opinion. It goes on the record. Thank you very much. Who's next?
You can ask questions, and they have responded to those questions during that time.
Okay.
But they don't respond until you nag at them and ask for that response. And we only got 2 minutes at the commissioners' meeting to say our piece individually.
Hey, Candy, before you get in the commissioners' meeting, I just one comment about one positive thing that might come out of the way that the city treated that referendum. Now, just so everyone knows, when you put a referendum forward, you don't have to have the precise language of what you're going to do. Normally, the process is that whatever language is come up with can come up there, it can come up through committee. And then after that, the attorney general or the county attorney or the attorney for the city would make the decision on whether or not the language was fine or okay. And then that language would be put on the ballot after it goes through the elections office. Okay, so there's a lot of steps.
I get
just real quick, Candy. just give me a second. The reason why the city's parlaying here, or the delaying process here, is going to have an impact is because when the Supreme Court of Montana comes to Missoula and asks if the city was trying to play fair with the people, and whether or not the city was doing a fair job of giving the people a say in this role, or whether or not the people of the city wanted the city to do what it did, the opponents are going to be able to point back on this. Well, then why did you not do this? Why did you delay? Why did you prevent? If you really wanted them to have a say.
Ask that question. I'm familiar with the process.
I'm not saying it for you. I'm just saying it generally, Candy.
Oh, yeah. Okay. But the thing about it is, yes, you're right. They could have informed him right away. But I want to point out one thing. This going to the county or city attorney to place a referendum or initiative on the ballot, I know that language has to be, gone over. But, they don't have the right to censor the public's request for a referendum or initiative either. They may clarify the language, but it's a petition or asking from the people. And this notion that if you don't go to the county attorney and get it read perfectly and worded perfectly, that's really not their right.
Okay, I know we got to get another caller on.
Bye.
You. Thanks for the call, Candy. Carrie is up next. Hi, Carrie. You're on Talkback. Go ahead.
Hey, guys. Thanks for taking my call.
You bet.
I wanted to talk about what Catherine said real quick. I do not understand the Ben Carson thing. I don't understand it a bit, but it doesn't make sense to me. I mean, Ted Cruz forwarded an article from CNN. He didn't write it. He didn't make it. He forwarded through tweet an article CNN suggesting that Carson was dropping out of the race in Idaho, and for that he has been treated by Carson like he's the devil himself.
Mm-hmm.
However,
there was another case where he was pretty cruel to Carson, and it was earlier on. I think it was South Carolina. But yeah,
maybe did he ever suggest that Ben Carson was a pedophile? Because Trump did.
You're right. You're absolutely right. Trump has said some extreme things. Yeah.
So to me, I do not. He didn't. He didn't have to endorse anybody. I totally get him not wanting to endorse Cruz. He didn't have to endorse anybody. He jumped in bed with a guy who called him a pedophile when he has portrayed himself as the holier than thou, I'm above all this politics stuff. I cannot understand it. But anyway, I got a quick thing about what Catherine said. I totally agree with her that this is about going after the donor class.
Okay.
I think that's true. What bewilders me, and I cannot understand why people can't see it, is that Trump is not the answer to this problem. He's the cause of it. He's one of the donor classes. He's been buying influence for 40 years.
And
why do we think he's antiseptic? Why do we think
he's been very plain about it. He says, I've given money to people on both sides for years.
I got a personal theory because I don't understand any of this. I'm an educated man, and I don't understand any of it. But I have a theory that he's just done with the middleman. He's been paying politicians to do his bidding for so long that this is just a business decision. Why do I have to pay a middleman? Why don't I go be the man and do whatever I want without having to fund them?
I'll go straight to the top. All right, Carrie, we got to run.
Thanks, guys.
Thanks for the call, man. Michael and Tyler, you guys are
I sympathize with you so greatly, Carrie.
All right, line 2. Well, we'll be right back after this 1-minute timeout. Oh, yeah. 721-1290 is the number. 1-800-568-5309. We are rapidly running out of time here on Open Phones.
Real quick.
Oh, yes.
We got a couple of comments on Facebook.
Let me
get through.
Go,
First off, Gloria says, the American Security Rally is tomorrow, Saturday at 3 at the Missoula County Courthouse. The purpose is to educate people in Missoula about the proposed refugee settlement. You had a story on this earlier. She says we need to have a voice for our future.
They say it's not about hate. It's about security.
Elena says, what town is celebrating St. Patrick's Day tomorrow? I think is what she's talking about, and that would be Missoula.
Right.
Josh says, you won't take back the reins of power from the cabals without a people's movement. Bernie Sanders wants that power back in the hands of the people. Josh, real quick, the way this works, socialism, you take the power from the people, put it in a centralized system, and then redistribute the power back to the people. That is not giving power to the people. It is taking it from them. The net loss goes to that centralized organization, or the net gain to the centralized organization. The net loss is to the people.
Okay, let's get Michael on the line. And Michael, you're on Talkback. Hi.
Good morning, Peter and John. It's been a while.
Yes, sir. What's on your mind?
Well, John, you just said something about the cabal. I think Trump and Carson, I don't even watch TV. I just go over and help a friend every now and then, get some wood in, and sat down this morning. I was listening to the whole thing. First time I watched TV in a while. And you talked about the cabal. It sounds
Josh
like Trump is talking about the oligarchy. And then a couple of callers back, you had a guy saying he thinks he's educated on the whole matter. And who
Cerebral,
is the
yeah.
cabal and who is the oligarchy? And we blame the corporations. But if you really look at who are the owners of the corporation, which would be like the Federal Reserve and the ones that run policy around the world, monetary policy, especially in Libya, Saudi Arabia. Remember, after World War II, Saudi Arabia was given to the British and to France. And then if you look at China, who was running the Hong Kong monetary policy through China until 1997 when Clinton came in. And then you look at the War of 1812. That's a really good history lesson on who really is the oligarchy and who is the cabal.
I take it from this line of element that you're going to the British and bankers.
Yeah, so if you look at Blair, who's supposed to be our biggest ally, but if you look at who's running the monetary policy around the world through the Bank of International Settlements out of Basel, Switzerland, all you educated people out of there that think you're educated, follow the money. And I've been saying that for quite a few years. My dad was a World War II vet, and he always said it was the British that pretty much run policy around the world, and they pretty much nailed it down. And here we're fighting amongst ourselves politically, and just pray for the nation. It's almost someone took a map and said, remember, I don't believe religion starts war. Governments use religion. And they just said, well, we'll just go after Islam. And one of the biggest Christian movements in the world going on right now is those poor Islamic faith-believing turned Christians almost overnight. So now's the time to get on our knees. And
Michael, we got to run. We got to get more callers. Thanks for the call. Appreciate it. Tyler, you're on Talkback. Hi.
Hi, guys. So I think this Trump-Carson conversation is happening all over the country right now. I know I'm having an interesting one in Virginia with my father right now. I can put my advice or my thought process behind the whole thing is I think Carson did it for a cabinet position.
I think
General?
I actually think in this case it's a more honorable thing.
General,
I think Carson, like a lot of people, feel that Trump is inevitable and that he wants to be a uniter, and in order to unite, he's going to stand behind Trump. Also, I think he does want to take another dig at Cruz, who has the only chance of hurting Trump because of the way that Cruz has played this political game.
Or do you think Carson would be better at the Department of Health and Human Services?
Ooh, that's a good one.
How about somebody to clean up Medicare and Medicaid?
Actually, Trump. Insider sources have said that education was the issue that Carson had been brought onto the team to help with Trump.
Yeah, so he'll appoint him at Department of Education and then eliminate the department. All right. Tyler, thanks for the call, man.
Thank you.
Appreciate it. All right, we got time enough we have 1 minute. Mike, you're on Talkback. Hi.
Hi, thanks for taking my call. There's a lot of criticism that Trump was in the money, into giving money to politicians. Well, he played the money game. Who better knows the insides of money politics than Donald Trump? And if he's coming out and says that it needs to be fixed, and then I put way more faith in somebody
So would you put the chicken coop in the hands of the fox?
Well, You see, the thing is, everybody thinks he's going to be a fox, but there's still going to be a Congress. There's still going to be a Senate. There's still going to be a House of Representatives.
Okay.
And there's still going to be a media that's going to hold him accountable. He's not going to be
like
a
they've
dictator.
done for the other presidents?
I'm sorry, what's that?
I mean, you think the media held Barack Obama responsible? Do you think the media is going to do its job? Do you think that the people, the Congress, is going to be able to start an executive action president like Obama?
Against a Republican? Are you kidding? The media's going to be all over that.
This is
Are
true.
you kidding?
But they're not going to be able to do anything,
Hey,
just
Mike-
like the media or the public haven't been able to under this president.
Dude, we're out of time. Thanks so much. We appreciate your call. Jeannie, I'm sorry we don't have time to get your call on. What's coming up on Monday's fabulous program?
We'll have open phones, one of our last open phones with Peter for a while.
Yes, well, first of all, we'll have Health Talk from 8:30 till 9 at Community Medical Center, and then open phones from 9 to 10. Don't forget all the St. Patrick's Day stuff and the protest tomorrow at 3.